They cut their teeth on providing this technology to help defense agencies. Is there anything wrong with helping provide technology to our government agencies? Unfortunately, you're seeing U.S. tech leadership, I think, go in the wrong direction. Palantir, co-founded by a guy named Joe Lonsdale and Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, everyone knows Peter Thiel. PayPal co-founder, like earliest investor in Facebook. Guy's an iconic tech investor and entrepreneur. Huge libertarian. And I think he's a big Tolkien fan. He actually started a VC firm called Mithril Capital, named after like Mithril in Lord of the Rings. Very quirky dude, amazing guy though. And Palantir cut its bread on I think one of their claim to fame is that they helped build the technology and the AI and the machine learning algorithms that helped catch Osama bin Laden, right? That were just they cut their teeth on providing this technology to help defense agencies, mine through I don't even know, it's beyond terabytes, whatever's past terabyte, just infinite amount of data. The NSA is storing, that the CIA is storing, FBI. How do you search through all this stuff and make sense of it? Palantir. Now Palantir is working with more commercial companies as well, and a bunch of other companies, but they really cut their teeth in the defense, in the government agencies, spying agencies world. And it's not a platform business. It's a software business with a heavy consulting dynamic. So, you're kind of using their tech. It's kind of like IBM in that regard. If you think about IBM and Watson, kind of like Watson-ish, but not as publicly advertised like IBM does it. But you have IP, and then you have, frankly, a bunch of consultants that are going into these companies and doing these very kind of mission critical software implementations. And that technology is going to unlock insights in machine learning and intelligence and all these things, right? The power of data. That is Palantir. I think they had like a $20 billion valuation a few years ago. And now they're filing to IPO in September once everyone gets back from vacations. So what's interesting though with this guy Alex Karp, who's I think co-founder and CEO. Yeah, there's a few co-founders of this company, but Alex is the CEO, and there's a cool interview. Palantir CEO issues blistering critique of Silicon Valley's engineering elite ahead of IPO. We've spoken before on the show about how there is some, it's weird, trepidation and this hesitancy on behalf of our US tech monopolies to work with the Department of Defense and build technology with them. Like working with the Department of Defense is bad. It's a very problematic thing, right? Like I get flack on the show for saying that there's nothing wrong with promoting American tech companies and trying to have policies that help American tech companies at the expense of, say, Chinese tech companies, like what's going on with TikTok, for example. Why is that a bad thing? There's nothing wrong with a sense of nationalism and wanting to help businesses or help your country. And if you're a foreign tech company and you want to launch a business in the United States, having rules around having, employees based here, you want to manufacture products here. I don't see what's wrong with that, but there's this kind of weird sense of if I'm a tech company and I help, and by the way, it's not like you're doing free work. The U.S. government is paying you to help do these deployments and build the software capability out. So, this is what Alex says. The engineering elites of Silicon Valley may know more than most about building software, but they do not know more about how society should be organized or what justice requires. He once criticized the increasing tolerance and monoculture of Silicon Valley. Guy doesn't like Silicon Valley. You want to know who else left Silicon Valley? Peter Thiel. He went down to LA. And this idea of this increasing intolerance and monoculture of Silicon Valley. So this was interesting. It goes deeper into the video, which you don't need to watch, but here are the highlights. I've had my favorite employees yell at me, he said. I've had some of my favorite employees leave. This is because some of Karp's own staff were unhappy with Palantir signing a contract with ICE. I had people protesting me. Some of whom I think asked really legitimate questions. I've asked myself, if I were younger at college, would I be protesting me? And it depends. The most valid criticism that they have is essentially that if you were involved in anything, that one instance of injustice, does it tarnish all instances of justice? The question is there anything wrong with helping provide technology to our government agencies? And should U.S. tech companies hesitate to work with our U.S. agencies? ICE, in this case, for Palantir. We've seen Google withdraw from contracts with the Pentagon, with the Department of Defense, despite what Sundar likes to say. Not very good at avoiding questions. He just kind of gives non-answers, but Google's done it. There's clearly precedent of it. There's clearly documentation of it. Google's still working with the Department of Defense, but it's Google. So you're going to obviously have some contracts that are still going. But to act like U.S. tech companies don't have a reticence to work with the government is just, asinine and frankly, disrespectful to just the general public's intelligence. I guess these U.S. tech companies are asking themselves this. I guess one of the challenges that they probably encounter is these are global companies. These are U.S. tech companies, but with, employees from all around the world. Everyone's got a bunch of different opinions. It really comes down to the leadership to try and figure out what's right and what's wrong. And unfortunately, you're seeing U.S. tech leadership, I think, go in the wrong direction. And if you think that, not helping out the U.S. government is admirable, but instead trying to do business in China is okay. Yeah, and there are serious, very, very serious hypocrisy in those actions. And we've actually seen Google do exactly that. We've seen Google withdraw from working with the U.S. government on contracts and instead try to go do business in China. You just can't really make sense of it all. It's just very odd, very peculiar, where, unfortunately, I think when you look at, even though the U.S. does have a lot of issues, particularly with agencies spying on American citizens. If you talk about, for example, the Five Eyes, this intelligence sharing apparatus amongst five kind of Western countries: Australia, Canada, New Zealand, United Kingdom, and the U.S. And basically what they do is, U.S. agencies are not allowed to spy on U.S. citizens without warrants and all these things. So instead what they say is, hey, England, can you spy on Alex? Because, we don't have a warrant to do it. But England, if you spy on Alex, we have intelligence sharing agreements. So now I can see what Alex is doing, but technically, the CIA, the NSA, whoever it is, isn't spying on Alex. England is. But then the U.S. agency can get that data from England. But technically, the U.S. agency never spied on Alex and didn't break the rules. This is Five Eyes. And so there is a big problem in this country of U.S. agencies abusing their power, spying on American citizens, and probably doing a bunch of other stuff that we don't even know about. That's a real issue. But, when you take a step back and you look at China and you look at how these Chinese tech companies are basically an extension of the CCP, that, not only is the data being fed into the CCP, certainly their technology, their IP is working in very close relation with any kind of, defense or military department in China. That's been well documented. So, if you take a step back and you think about it on that scale, you got some very serious decisions to make when you look at the broader kind of just this reckoning that's happening, where you have basically a split. We've called it the Splinternet. We've called it a variety of different things, but you have a split on the three main planes that the U.S. and China operate on. Economically, now we're seeing with tariffs and trade. Militarily, as we're seeing China become an exporter of military equipment, and with technology. That's the third rung, whether it's physical tech infrastructure like Huawei, or if it's now software technology like we're seeing with Grindr, TikTok, and others. You are seeing a divide where you have kind of Western forces, democratic countries, capitalist countries, countries that promote this thing called freedom, diverge from China. And, the hope was on China that 20, 30 years ago that we would invest in China, we would bring our businesses, we would, bring our support, our financial support, we would give them access to Western markets. And then eventually China would open up. China would come to, kind of embrace these Western ideals. And unfortunately, I think it's pretty clear that has not happened. It's actually backfired pretty drastically. And fortunately, everyone's starting to wake up, smell that coffee, and realize that we have a very serious competitor in China, one that conceptually is on a very different wavelength than what the U.S. and our other kind of Western democratic countries believe in, just conceptually and from an ideals standpoint. And so that has brought us to this divisive plane across all these kind of three main divisions. And it all harkens back to this idea of saying, well, why would a US tech company feel comfortable working in China, but then not feel comfortable working with the US government? If you can figure that one out, let me know. But riddle me that. Hi, this is Alex from Winner Take All. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the content. Feel free to leave a comment, ask us questions, and definitely make sure to join us on our next live stream.